this case, Lazarus needed life. Jesus is the life. He has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. In Hebrew, literally, it means He lifted up, He crucified your diseases. He crucified your sicknesses. That which caused your strength to flow out of you, He grabbed it and carried it away. Okay, so I've got a pet peeve. I've got a couple of pet peeves. One is spraying myself directly in the forehead with hairspray. I hate it when I do that. Second pet peeve. I despise when a Christian tells someone, Jesus is your answer. Oh! I know they're right, but they don't know why they're right, and I hate that answer. Whew. I am glad that I got that off my chest. Thank you. I don't know if you guys are going to get anything from this message today, but me, I already have. Thank you. I hate it when people say Jesus is the answer. They're like, yeah, you know, I've been dealing with this thing, this stuff, and I just don't know how to actually get it to happen. You know, I've been believing God for this healing, and I just don't know how to get it. And some spiritual genius chimes in with, Jesus is your answer. Jesus is the reason why you haven't gotten it, and Jesus is the reason why you get it. What are you talking about? Come on, man. Okay, maybe it still bothers me a little bit. But, anyway, point of all this is, Jesus is your answer. All right. In John chapter 11 is where I'm going to be looking at this. We've got Jesus he's going to go handle this problem with Lazarus. Lazarus is sick. So they sent word to Jesus, Mary and Martha, who's Lazarus' sister, sent word to Jesus saying, get Jesus over here. My brother's very sick. She cares about him, all this other stuff. It's a good relationship, apparently. It's not like a lot of you are with your brothers. She really cared. She didn't want him dead. She wanted Lazarus well, sent for Jesus. They've seen Jesus' miracles. Okay? Well, Jesus is out. He's in another place, another part of the land, and he's doing whatever Jesus is doing. Okay? And he got word about Lazarus. And that he knew about it for 2 days, but he stayed there because Jesus is committed to doing what God's called him to do. Jesus isn't moved by emotionalism. Okay, when you know, sad as it is, your relative, your brother, whatever, your good friend gets sick back at home, Jesus doesn't just quit what God's telling him to do, because Jesus sees things differently than we see things. We perceive it and we get self-focused and self-centered, thinking, well, they're going to think that I'm not compassionate and stuff like that. I have that problem frequently. I don't really know why, but I have that problem somewhat frequently where people think that I'm uncompassionate, and I'm not going to be the guy that says, well, it's because I am following God's will first. You know, sometimes I'm just a jerk. I'm not going to lie to you about it. But Jesus here is not just being a jerk. He's doing what he's doing. And what he was doing was what God wanted him to do. How simple can you get? Okay? Then anyway, a couple of days into it, Jesus tells his disciples, all right, we're going to go see Lazarus. We're going to go heal Lazarus. And his disciples are like, wait a minute! Now, here's a reality factor here. People literally, the Pharisees were literally going to kill Jesus. They wanted to stone him. You know, we think of stoning and we picture it as some long ago, ancient, old-time thing, old religious thing. We got these pictures in our minds of it. You know, they're throwing these around. boulders at Jesus and people and stuff like that. But no, this was literally killing someone. They did this. You know, when our law enforcement's draw a gun on you, most people take it pretty serious. Some don't. And they usually get killed or get stoned with lead. Okay? This was a real deal. They wanted to stone Jesus. They felt they had the grounds for it. They weren't that interested in taking him to trial. If it was such a direct blasphemy, I don't even know if they would need to. So anyway, they're like, we're not going to see Lazarus. If he's sleeping, that's good for him. He'll be well. Jesus' friends were trying to talk him out of going there. Jesus said, Lazarus is dead. Here's one good point here. God will often take things that are a big deal to us and make them nothing if we'll let him. He'll make a dead man just a sleeping man. It doesn't change anything. It's not a lie. Jesus, all he has to do for a sleeping man is go and wake him up. Jesus, for a dead man, all he's got to do is go and wake him up. Okay? His mindset is right. A lot of times God will say, you don't have cancer. You don't have a brain tumor. You don't have all these terrible diseases. All you got is your vision's a little off. That's not a big deal. We'll get that corrected like that. And it doesn't matter. If the world wanted to call it cancer and you wouldn't let them, it doesn't matter if the world wanted to call it a brain tumor. God says it's nothing. And whether it's a poor vision or a brain tumor, it's healed by Jesus' stripes. That's the mindset of Christ. Oftentimes we'll go, no. This is a big deal. You know, we'll talk to God like that. God, this is a big deal. We'll talk to our friends like that. They're like, you know, man, I don't mean to be rude, but man up a little bit. You just stumped your toe. And you're screaming that it's infected and all those terrible things. And we just want to magnify problems. That's the wrong way. It's the opposite way. So anyway, Jesus is like, I'm going to raise Lazarus from the dead. Lazarus is dead. He didn't say he's going to go raise him from the dead, but I know that because I've read the chapter. Anyway, Thomas, good old Thomas, faithful. That part is true. Maybe not full of faith, but he was faithful. He was committed to Jesus. Because Thomas gets up and says, well, if Jesus is going to go die, we'll just go with him. We'll go die too. I don't know if Jesus had probably turned away at that point, was walking off, and he probably heard Thomas rise up and say, you know what, let's go with him. There's probably a pause. Jesus apparently said, Lazarus is dead, I'm going to this place. And then he starts going, because Jesus is not controlled by emotionalism. And you know what? If his friends wanted to come, good. If they didn't, you know, it's their choice. Jesus didn't lasso them and drag them with him on a leash. Although a lot of people I'm not even going to start picking on it. But anyway, so Jesus is walking. He probably left wherever they were at. Thomas is like, well, guys, I'm going to go die with him. And he left and went with Jesus. So did all the disciples. So they went to wherever in the world Lazarus was at. It's in the Bible. John 11. Look it up. But anyway, so they're going there, and word gets to Martha that Jesus has arrived. Okay? And Martha comes running out to Jesus, and she's like, oh, Jesus, this is such a big deal. This is a really, really big deal. If you had been here, my brother wouldn't be dead. And I don't want to make fun of this, because a lot of us have experienced someone we love dying, and it's an emotional time. But Jesus didn't let the emotions control him. He wept in this chapter, and we're going to talk about that. But I don't believe it was over Lazarus because he knew he was about to raise him from the dead. Anyway, don't let me get ahead of myself. Slow me down. Not really. Don't slow me down. But anyway, let's get off of this little side conversation with myself and get back to the story. Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not be dead. And Jesus said to her, you believe in me. What did he say exactly? Let me see if I can find it real quick. John 11, or verse 23. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Your brother will rise again. Oh, that sounds like the type of answer that really gets on my nerves, and Jesus is the one who said it. But, thank God he explains himself. Your brother will rise again. Martha goes, I know, Jesus. This isn't the end. This isn't the end. He's in a better place, and I'll see him again. And you know, just that answer of accepting the situation. She goes, I'll see him again. I know at the last day at the resurrection. And Jesus says, Martha, I am the resurrection and the life. And this is where Jesus became the answer. This is what it means, Jesus is your answer. Jesus is Yahweh. I am. Jesus is what you need. In this case, Lazarus needed life. Jesus is the life. In your case, you may need healing. Jesus is health. He is the Word of God, which is health to all of our flesh. You may be in a financial strait like no other. Jesus, by his poverty, you were made rich. Jesus is your answer. So, Martha's like, okay, what'd she say next? Here, let me just read it to you. All right, Martha said, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother died. Talked about that. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and life. He that believeth me, though he were dead, yet shall he live, and whosoever liveth and believeth shall never die. Believe thou this? ? Martha said, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. Martha basically saying, you know what, Jesus, that is a whole lot to swallow right now, but you're God. I believe you. Whatever you say, it is so. Remember what the centurion said? He said to Jesus, when his servant was sick, he came to Jesus and he said, you don't have to come to my house. He goes, I'm a man who has people under me, and I'm a man who has people over him. When someone says go, they go. When I tell someone to go, they go. When someone tells me to do this, I do this. All you need to do, Jesus, is give the word. And that's the type of faith that made Jesus marvel. One of only 2 times recorded in the Bible that Jesus marveled over someone's faith. And so, Martha's saying, you know what you say is good. So, and when she had said so, she went away and called Mary, her sister, secretly and said, Jesus is here. So Jesus is walking towards the whole deal with Lazarus. Okay, he's going to him. And then Mary comes out. So Mary gets up and runs off in the middle of the crying. You know, everyone's sitting on their couches and their chairs and stuff, and they're comforting Mary and Martha and them and stuff. And Mary kind of gets up quickly and kind of just scoots out real quick. And they're like, she must be going to the grave to mourn there. And they all go with her to comfort her and stuff. And she comes up to Jesus. And she says, Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not be dead. Now, keep in mind, Jesus is here to raise Lazarus from the dead. Jesus already has said what he was going to do. He already knows what he's going to do. It's not a surprise to Jesus, but here Jesus weeps. he looked around. He sees Mary crying. And he sees all Mary's friends crying. And Jesus himself groaned in his spirit and began to cry. Our God began to cry when he saw people weeping because they believed they were helpless. They believed that they were in a situation that they couldn't get out of. They had no knowledge that God is a God who raises the dead, that God is a God who heals the sick, who cleanses the lepers, who redeems your life from destruction. They did not know that God is a God who raises the dead, and it made Jesus cry. Jesus groaned in his spirit, and he began to cry. And he was troubled. Verse 33. Jesus said, where have you laid him? Where have you laid him? He's not correcting him right now. He's saying, where have you laid him? As he wept. And the people there that were comforting Mary were like, look how much Jesus loved this man. And I believe Jesus loved Lazarus, but Jesus already knew what Jesus was going to do. He already said, the reason I'm going over there, risking my own life, quote unquote, we would call it that. Jesus wasn't at risk. He was a man of faith. And he was going to raise Lazarus. He wasn't crying because Lazarus was dead, in the sense of that Lazarus was gone. He was crying because these people had no revelation of him yet. They didn't know that God is a good God who wants Lazarus well. So Jesus says, where have you laid him? Where is he at? And then people started talking amongst themselves like, couldn't this man have healed Lazarus? You know, we sent word to him and stuff. They're like, he healed the centurion's son. We've heard stories of Jesus healing people without actually being there. Why didn't he heal Lazarus? Why didn't he heal Lazarus? And while this groaning was going on, Jesus again groaned within himself as he came to the grave. And this grave was a cave with a stone laid on it. When people started asking all these questions, you know, why didn't Jesus heal him and stuff? And Jesus knows that he's about to raise Lazarus from the dead, so Jesus is not crying here, and he's not groaning because Lazarus is dead. To Jesus, he's just asleep. He already expressed that. Jesus is the resurrection and the life. He is our answer. He knows this. Why did he groan again? What is this groan in his spirit? What in the heck is that? And why does it seem to happen when the people are bothered? When the people are disturbed? The people's lack of knowledge is causing Jesus his groaning. These people are distraught over this situation. They are crying. They think it's the end, and Jesus is outside of this picture because he's got a different mindset. He's got the clarity of mind and the knowledge of God because he is God. And he sees this, and I believe it's like how God looks to a lot of Christians who are dying of cancer and things, when by his stripes we've been healed. How do you cash that in? How do you turn that into the actual healing? Knowledge. Jesus says in John 8:31 and 32, "You're my disciples indeed if you continue in my word, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." You continue in the word, and that produces knowledge. Okay, that produces knowing the word. Continuing and focusing on the word produces knowledge. Knowledge is believing. When I know something, I believe that it is so, and I'm sure that it is so. Knowledge is faith as well. These people know the truth that you have knowledge of that makes you free or affects your physical situation. You might know the Bible says that by Jesus' stripes you're healed. Okay? But do you know it? Have you persuaded yourself of it? Have you convinced yourself of it? Have you convinced yourself of it? Have you convinced yourself that you are healed? Brian, I can't do that. I've got no leg. Have you convinced yourself that you have a spiritual leg there because God has already done everything? God's words are spirit and they are life. First, they are spirit. By Jesus' stripes you're healed. You've got a leg where you don't have a physical leg. Do you see your spiritual leg there? Do you know it's there? Do you believe that what you believe is true and it manifests in the physical realm? Take a step on your spiritual leg and, my gosh, Brian must be crazy, but you've got a physical leg. It always starts off in the spiritual. I've got a teaching called What Are Spiritual Blessings in Heavenly Places? Might be a good one if you struggle with something like that. But anyway, they didn't have the knowledge. Jesus groaned in himself again. Jesus said, take away the stone. Martha said, Jesus, it's been dead 4 days. It stinks. They're so caught up in this physical, carnal situation. They're so caught up in what has physically happened. This wasn't an expected death. This is a big deal. Jesus, it's been 4 days. He stinks. Jesus said, did I not say to you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? Then the next verse goes, they took the stone away. I don't know if Martha was like, it's a good point, take the stone away. I don't know if Martha had said anything. I don't know what happened at that particular moment. But Jesus asked her that question, did I not tell you that if you would believe, if you would expect good from God, that you would see the glory of God? And then that stone was gone. They took that stone away. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, I thank you that you have heard me, God. And I know that you always hear me, but I'm saying this for these people's sakes, so that they can see that you sent me, because I'm telling you, God, that if I'm not from you, this ain't going to happen, because only you can raise the dead. And then he cried out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come! And Lazarus came out. He was bound hand and foot in grave clothes. His face is covered. And he came out like a modern day mummy. And believe it or not, this triggered quite the reaction. A lot of people believed that Jesus was God at this point. Because a man who had been dead for 4 days came right out. He said, take the clothes off of him. Everyone's probably like, so Jesus had to be like, hey, take his grave clothes off of him so they didn't suffocate and die again. You know, they're staring at stuff like this, all wide-eyed, like, Jesus like, take his clothes off, take the grave clothes off of him, get him something to eat. Man's been dead 4 days. Come on now. Come on. Show him some kindness here. And he raised Lazarus from the dead. What does this have to do with what I started off talking about? Because we need to understand that Jesus is our answer, and we need to understand that. We don't just need to know to say it. Man, I hate that. Ah! Jesus is your answer. You got to get to know God to know God's will. And as you get to know God, you're going to find out that He's not a God of sickness. He's not a God who puts sickness on people. He's not a God who wants you poor and unable to do anything. He's not a God who wants you lacking this, lacking that. He's not a God that wants you to experience pain. He's not a God that wants you to go through all this crap. All the curse is reversed because Jesus took away our sins. And He restored everything. You know, in Isaiah 54 it says, where briars and thorns, which are symbols of the curse in this passage, used to grow. Now there's this tree, the myrtle tree, and bushes and good stuff, you know. The curse is reversed. God's not planting thorns in your garden anymore. God's not putting evil on your plate. I know you saw some of that, and I'm not going to explain the entire Bible right now. But my point here and now is that God is a good God, and as you know Him, you'll realize this. And whatever's not good, Jesus is your answer, just like He told Martha. When Martha mistook Him for just being religious, for just saying something that He didn't know what He meant. Okay? Martha's got a dead brother. A dead brother. A corpse laying in a grave for 4 days. And Jesus says He'll rise again. Oh, yes, Lord, I know. You know, it's easy to believe in something far off in the future. That's what makes evolution believable to some people, is because it happened so long ago. You put some time between yourself and it, and yeah, it's believable. Yeah, he'll rise in the future. Jesus said He'll rise. Martha said, you know, He'll rise at the resurrection. Jesus said, I am the resurrection. Yahweh, I am the resurrection and the life. Jesus is salvation. That's what His name means, Yeshua. He is forgiveness, freedom from sin, forgiveness, your rotten, nasty acts, your perverse acts, forgiven, washed clean, born brand new. Salvation is health. Jesus is health. By His stripes you were healed. Isaiah chapter 53 verse 4, where it says He has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. In the Hebrew, literally, it means He lifted up, He crucified your diseases. He crucified your sicknesses. And He carried away, He grabbed onto and carried away those things which caused your strength to flow out of an open hand. That's the literal deep meaning I see in the word. Jesus crucified your diseases. That which caused your strength to flow out of you, He grabbed it and carried it away. He crucified your diseases. He was stripped naked. Everything was taken from Him, including friends and family. Jesus was at the depth of poverty so that you could be supplied with value. There's something in you that's unique, and it's worth the world's money. And the world can pay you money for something you have, because Jesus supplied every born-again believer with value. He took away our poverty and supplied us with value. He delivered us from the kingdom of darkness. What is that? Colossians 1:17? 1:13 maybe? He snatched us out from Satan's dominion. Satan had rights to us till Jesus. Now we're born out of that. Jesus is your answer. And that's why